like seeing their personality blossom and seeing them start to trust you and the way that they're like their facial expression, their eyes light up, like how
Yeah.
everything changes for the better most of the time.
Yes.
Like it's really lovely. It's the best part of it. That's the whole joy of getting into rescue or rescuing your dog from a shelter is that you get to be a part of that process. And you know what? It isn't always easy. Like you do have ups and downs or like sleepless nights or 7 accidents in the house over the period of a day. But you reap what you sow from taking that time to help them to heal and to trust and to get used to this new home. Like, it's such a privilege, and there's nothing really like earning the trust of a nervous or anxious rescue dog.
Hello, humans and puggies. Welcome to the Pug Life Show, brought to you by Pug Parties, because your pug deserves to be the best dressed at the porty. And you can check out the pug fitting, harness and toilet friendly Pugs and Stripes collection at pugparties.com. I'm your host, Donna, and with me, as always, are my puggy co-hosts, Rosie and Kenji, with their rescue foster brother Buster. Today we're talking about something every new rescue pug parent should be aware of. The Rescue Pug Honeymoon Period. Sounds very romantic. Specifically, what happens when you bring home a rescue pug and they seem unbelievably well behaved or incredibly naughty, and you think to yourself, wow, I lucked out, or have I made a huge mistake? Our friend Jess from Howling Success Dog Training is back to talk about the emotional rollercoaster of those first few weeks/months and how to support your new snuggle pug as they settle into their forever family and home. But before we zoom in, don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter. You'll find the link in the show notes so you can be the first to know when the next episode lands and get access to lots more pugtastic goodies. Hello, Jess. Welcome back to the Pug Life Show. Thank you so much for agreeing to come back so soon after the last time you came on.
Thank you so much for inviting me back. I really enjoyed myself when I came on with Alex, and I'm really excited to chat with you again.
Oh, thank you. No, it was great. It was a great episode, and it's actually not only is on our Pug Life Show page on the website, but it's actually on our Pug Rescue page as well, because I think that new parents or soon to be adoptive parents really, really do need to have all of those things sort of in the back of their mind as they're shopping for an adoptive dog as opposed to shopping for a puppy, even though I suppose in some ways you do kind of have to think the same things when you're shopping for a puppy. But this is kind of the companion episode, for want of a better term, to that one, which was episode 14 for anyone who hasn't listened to it. This is talking about the Rescue Pug Honeymoon Period, or the 333 rule, as it's also known, which I think is, as I said, the companion piece, but an incredibly important topic, because if you've never had a rescue pug or a rescue dog before, sometimes you don't know what you're getting yourself in for that first transition period. And for some people, they end up sending the dog back because they just weren't ready, which is really sad for both parties.
Absolutely.
Oh, so before we crack into the actual topic, Jess, for those who haven't listened to episode 14, tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Yeah, so my name is Jess Sandstrom, and I am the co-owner of Howling Success Dog Training and Behaviour on the northern beaches of Sydney in New South Wales. I am the pet parent to a gorgeous Rottweiler by the name of Odin, and I found my way into dog training by working in a rescue shelter, Monica's Doggy Rescue in Sydney, and then I foster failed a bull mastiff red cattle dog by the name of Snow. She ended up having some reactivity and aggression issues, which was how I really found my way into becoming a professional dog trainer. I joke sometimes that I didn't have a choice. As often when we start working in rescue, we find our way into things like this,
Yep.
into situations like this. And I think Alex and I talked about it in the last episode that you don't have to become a professional dog trainer just because you rescued a dog. And we're here to guide you through that process with the 333 rule.
Yes, but sometimes it does come hand in glove. Like, the more I read and the more I learn, I then think to myself, why don't I just go and get a qualification with one of these? It's just insane. But I also think that, you know what, we're experts in our own human selves. Our pugs can't talk to us. And when you have children, you end up becoming experts in your children's life and all that sort of stuff. So it does kind of make sense that to understand your fur kids, you do kind of have to become experts in whatever it is that it's affecting them. And when you have multiple fur children, you do feel like you've got a split personality at times, I think. So this, as I said, really important topic, another topic that's actually quite close to my heart. And we did kind of touch on it in episode 14 where we're talking about sort of what it's like when they first come home, and it's especially when it's your first dog and you think you know everything, and then you realize that like within a week everything that you thought you knew is utter crap, or
Yeah.
is completely irrelevant to the pug that you've got in your house because you've read a book about how pugs should behave, which is the perfect example of the way a pug should behave, which also means that they should win the Crufts Award every year. And then you compare it to the pug that you do have that's
They didn't read
either,
the book.
yeah, asleep on your lap or asleep on a bed or asleep with your children or whatever else. So, and this is sort of, and we did touch on the 333 rule in the other episode, but I'd subsequently learned that there is a much prettier name for it, which is the honeymoon period, except that sometimes it's not actually the honeymoon period. It's more like the horror period because you've got a pug that's slightly reactive or has had such a horrible other family that they just don't know how to behave in another environment. So what we'll do is we'll explain what the 333 rule is, and then we'll dive into sort of a little bit more of what we can expect and how we can kind of manage it so that you don't end up returning them. Like you get through that period and then it's puggily ever after.
Yeah. So the 333 rule is more of a guide than a rule. Dr. Susan Friedman from Behavior Works has a really great saying that behavior is a study of one. And you really hit the nail on the head talking about the pug and the pug book that the pug didn't read. I will often talk to my clients too to be like, there is, the general guide of what dogs enjoy, but you've got to learn about your dog and what they
Yes.
like. So it's a guide, not a rule. Behavior is a study of one. But if we're thinking about it as a general guide, you want to think about 3 days for the dog to decompress just from the stress of being in a shelter environment, 3 weeks for them to begin to settle into the environment that they're in, and then 3 months for them to start to feel like this is their home and to know your routine, to be building some real solid trust and relationships with people in your family. So a guide, not a rule, is the big thing that I want to circle back to, because you will always get the random weirdo that just lands on their feet like, yay, let's go.
Yep.
And other dogs that might be a real hot mess when they first come home, but then over that 3-month period just come good. So yeah, it's just a nice little way to measure out that time frame and not have guardians want to just hit the ground running. I think one of the things that I said in the last episode, and I will repeat now, is to maybe not take your new rescue dog to the off-leash dog park on the first day you get them. It's probably I don't like to speak in generalizations when it comes to behavioral training, but I'm going to say that one is a definite. Definitely don't do that. It's a big risk.
Oh, yes. And I think sometimes, like, because I was in the Navy, and so every 18 months to 2 years, you were ripped away from wherever you were living and the friendships that you developed, and then you would be posted to the other side of the country, and you go and join a new ship or a new team or whatever was going on. And even though you had a level of familiarity because it's still basically the same job and you all kind of know what you're doing and all that sort of stuff, it is still quite disconcerting. You've sort of, because you've got to reestablish routines and find new friends and figure out what the rules are. And it's always something that I thought with, like, whenever we had a new foster pug come in, we were the same thing. Like we'd post on our playgroup site, hey guys, got a new foster pug. This is their name. This is what they look like. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. We're not, unless that pug, we did have one, Roxy. She was a little pocket rocket. She had anxiety, but she was the energizer pug that and so what she needed to run. She just needed, like Kenji, just needed that time to run. And so we figured out, even though she'd only been with us for a couple of days, that we could take her to playgroup before everybody else arrived. So she could have a good sprint around the big open play area. And so then by the time everybody else had sort of started to trickle in, she could have a little bit of a sniff. And then we racked off.
Yeah,
So
nice.
we weren't there for like the entire playgroup time. We just sort of said, right, this is the space that you get to sprint, run, skid, do whatever you want, torment Kenji. God knows they used to do that to each other. And then sort of meet a couple of the typical inhabitants, and then we racked off. And
Perfect.
then, but yeah, we've had others. We had one who was incredibly aggressive. She was a completely different kettle of fish. But it wasn't until I think Fat Dog with my first pug, Fat Dog was one thing. And then we got Winston and Charles. And it still took me 6 months to realise that Winston is not Fat Dog because they were both black, whereas Charles was fawn. And that was when the penny started to drop for me that every pug is a unique personality, and I cannot base how I live with them and how I set their rules based on the previous pug.
And that's such a good thing to note, because I feel like often, especially if you're attached to a specific breed and you regularly get that same breed, it can be hard not to fall into that trap of my last dog syndrome.
Yeah.
Where it's like, but my last pug or my last Jack Russell or my last Shih Tzu did this. And it's, as you say, it can take a bit of a moment of thinking or reflection or realization to be like, wow, well, of course they're different individuals. You know, I've got a twin brother. Technically, we're litter mates. Like, we're very different people.
Oh, I can't wait to see Christmas. But I do agree, like, Winston and Charles were litter mates, and they were, as much as they were a bonded pair, Winston was like, "See you later, losers." Like, this was playgroup. "See you later, losers. I'm gone. You know, I will see you when I decide to come back." Whereas Charles was very much, "Don't you go anywhere without me." Like, he was always a foot away and no more. And the only way I could get him to socialise was if I walked around and socialised with everyone at the same time. That was how we got Charles to a point where he would start to kind of venture out a little bit.
Yeah.
But it is like and I know people say it's a luxury, taking that first 3 days off or having them come to you like on a Friday night or a Saturday morning so you've got a weekend is so important. Like we now try and time any rescues that come to stay with us so that we've got a weekend before we kind of then say, okay, I think you're going to be okay being in the house with the other two and me at work.
Yeah.
We've yet to have a pug chew furniture. We've been very lucky.
Very nice.
Very lucky.
I would say as well, like I got Odin from a registered breeder as a puppy. I took maybe a bit extra. I took 6 months off work like, to invest. Like, I was like, you know, gonna invest time in this puppy and raising him and getting him used to all of like everything.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's possibly dog trainer level extra. Maybe 6 weeks could have been okay, but you know, I think some people
Or
don't even
6
quite take
days.
6 months maternity leave. But it was paternity leave for me.
I love it. I wish I'd had that with all of my pugs. That would have definitely, like, toilet training Winston and Charles, that took 6 months. That was exhausting. But I was at uni then, so that kind of, at least I did have a little bit more flexibility. But it is actually quite an interesting point where you were talking about, like, you took time off. You invested the time to make sure that they were comfortable with their environment and with the rules and all those sort of things. And I think the key word is it's an investment. Whether you take on a puppy or a rescue, they're not set and forget. And and I think anyone who tells you that this dog is a set, you know, this one's easy, and God knows, like, I look at Buster and I say, he is an easygoing dog. Absolutely. But he's blind and deaf. So that means that we had to spend the first 24 hours teaching him the lay of the house. We still had to teach him how to use the doggy door. He, out of all of our fosters, was the fastest one to learn how to use the doggy door. And he can't see or hear, which is just incredible for him. But just the investment up front, I think definitely you what's the word I'm looking at? You reap the rewards so much quicker. So maybe we're still in the honeymoon period. He's been with us for 12 months.
I don't know if you saw me like viscerally fighting the urge not to go on a behavior tangent when you were talking about how he learned to use the doggy door faster. I'm like, I wonder if it's not being able to see the tight proximity or
I
the door
know.
coming towards it. Anyway, that's
Exactly.
not what we're talking about right now.
But it's as I said, it's amazing. Like he has adapted so well. But I'm sure that there are people out there who said, "No, God no, my blind
Yeah,
dog, hell no." Like,
yeah, yeah.
and so it is incredible. But so I think like the key thing is I mean, probably we should ask the question: what is the worst that can happen if your honeymoon period isn't as great as you thought it was going to be? I
Oh,
just
there is, I think, if the honeymoon period isn't going well and you've done everything, I hope I'm answering this question
Mhm.
accurately. If your honeymoon period isn't going well and you feel that you've done everything possible to set up for success and it's not working out. Like, I think that's another thing that we touched on in episode 14 is to normalize returns, not to make a snap decision and just go, oh, this is dumb and I don't like it, but to have that list of non-negotiables before you bring the dog home, because
Mhm.
everybody needs to know within a family unit what they can cope with, what they're happy to try and work on, and what is a non-negotiable. I think we have the same thing when we're entering into human relationships,
Yes.
either platonic or romantic, that there are things that are deal breakers for everyone. And just like when a rescue is choosing an adoptive family, we hope that they've got some knowledge of the dog's personality, understanding that it is hard to get a true read of the dog's personality in a shelter environment. Maybe
Mm.
you get a better idea if the dog's in a foster home. But again, it is hard, and we would always respect that there could be changes that no one foresaw. But to have that hard, fast list of deal breakers where if you go, okay, well, maybe one we can work through. If there's two happening, we might go, okay, this is starting to affect the family unit. If there's three or four of those deal breakers that are all coming together, we might go, okay, I think we need to talk to the shelter to say, look, this is what we're doing. Maybe seek professional help if you really want to make it work, but also
Mhm.
you I don't wanna sound like I'm encouraging people to return their dog, but it's like you don't have to ruin your life or become a professional dog trainer if you don't want to. If you want to, do it. But if you don't want to, just because it's not working out and you feel that you're doing everything possible to help the dog and to help yourself. Again, if you are crying foul that it all went wrong because you took the dog to the off-lead dog park when you were told not to and they had a fight, well, you should probably just roll up a newspaper and smack yourself in the face. Um, but
You're not
yeah.
the first trainer I've spoken to that has said that either.
It's a go-to line for us because it makes people go, "Oh," when we're positive trainers thinking that we're gonna say hit the dog, and I love to give people a little giggle like that. But yeah, if you've set up for success as much as possible and you feel that everything is as low stress and easy as possible for everybody and it's still not working out, sometimes it is that it is just not working out, and that
Yeah.
sucks, but it's okay, and it should be allowed to go and contact the shelter to say, "Look, please, we need help," or, "We're sorry, we can't do this."
Mm.
And you shouldn't necessarily be blacklisted if you've tried everything. Like,
No,
you should
and
be doing.
sometimes it's just I mean, as I said, we've touch wood, we've been incredibly lucky. And potentially, I say we've been incredibly lucky because I have such a low expectation of when we have a new pug come into the house, even when we're puppy sitting. Like, if anything, the biggest shock to our system is because we've got senior pugs, we're used to senior pug lifestyle,
Yeah.
which is slow, sleepy, cuddly, instead of a friend's pug who we looked after a couple of years ago who was 2, and I'm like, "Oh my god." Like, we were sitting there after the first day. I was exhausted, like, just because I had forgotten what it was like to have a 2-year-old in the house. Even to the point where at the time it was I had Charles and Rosie, like, both of them were hiding under a chair because they were like,
"Get him away from
"Just
me."
leave me alone for 5 minutes." It was just and whereas I won't say his name, he was just adorable, but it was just and I ended up having to pick him up and give him a cuddle just so that I could get him to calm down for 5 seconds. And I think part of it for him was it was the excitement of a new house, and he knew us from playgroup. And there was so many things to do and all that sort of stuff, and it was just, "Oh my god, I had forgotten how much work this is," and that's not his fault. And so I just sort of think sometimes maybe it's just my low expectations that whenever a pug comes into the house, I know they're going to piddle. And I think that's probably an expectation that all new adoptive parents should have. They're going to toilet in the house, and they're going to toilet in the house where you don't want them to. And it's probably the one thing we should talk about is I call it my new pug toolkit. I don't know what you advise your new dog owners, but like I have paper towel, the stuff that gets rid of urine smell, the stuff that goes on the carpet that soaks up urine that you can then vacuum up, and then there's something else. I don't even bother with pee pads. They're a waste of time. Like, oh, and I get extra treats because obviously it takes 3 times the number of treats to teach them how to use the doggy door. So that's my new pug kit that I have. And then on top of that, I try to remind myself every day that this will get better.
Yeah.
It's probably the same as like new parents when the baby's got colic or something. Every day is that it will get better.
Yeah.
Yes, I know that I'm on my hands and knees at 5:00 in the morning, picking up poop and soaping up whittle again.
Yeah.
And if you're lucky, it's only in one room. But for me, never lucky, every room. Like just accept that it's every room.
Yeah. I saw a funny TikTok or something about someone being like, newborn versus a puppy. It's like, at least with a newborn, you know that like they're in their cot if they vomit, and if they go to the toilet, it's in the nappy. Puppy, if you're not using a puppy playpen, which you probably should be, but puppy, if they're freewheeling, you hear the vomit, it could be anywhere. Is it in your shoe? Is it on the rug? You're going to have to go find out. So I will say, as a, not necessarily a new parent, I have a 2.5-year-old toddler now, but the newborn stage compared to a puppy, for us at least, I was like, oh my God, this is so much easier than having a puppy. What the hell? I'm having like emotional whiplash. I thought this was going to be so much harder. Now that I have a toddler, I'm like, oh, it's because a puppy, you're immediately thrust into toddlerhood. And
Yes.
now I'm like, oh my God, this is really hard. This is just as hard as a puppy. This is even harder because it's not really socially acceptable to crate your child. It's like,
I have been known to say that the difference between a child and a pug is that I can lock my pug outside when they've pissed me off and nobody calls the police. There's the same amount of crying and carry on because they're not inside with you. And it is one of those, like the first, and I don't know if I've just gotten better practiced at it or I said my expectation threshold has lowered with the number of pugs that we've had. But I do find it has gotten easier. And I just accept that, yes, we are going to have to clean up. Like we had one dog, we only had, what was his name? Wally, for 3 months. And that entire 3 months, he piddled in the house every day didn't poop. Like it was, and it's so funny because, as we were saying before, each one is different. Just pooped outside, pedaled inside. And it was like, but he also had his favourite spots. So that was my morning routine. I'd get up and I'd walk, as we walk to the perimeter, and we looked through all the little pedal spots, and it'd be just like, there seriously can't be anything left in the house for you to piddle on. Like, try, and then sort of like having to vacuum up the sand. And it's so funny because like Andrew will come home and he'll walk in and he'll be like, Wally's at it again, because you'll see the pile of sand from soaking up all the residue. And so I said that was my new pug kit. Doesn't matter what age they are, definitely got to have all the things that, luckily I haven't had too many vomiters.
Nice.
Thank God.
Yeah.
Just absolutely thank God for that. But what are some of the other things that, other than obviously the puppy toileting kit and having a checklist, what are some of the other things that pug parents can do when they're still thinking about adopting, or they've made the application and they know the puppy's coming?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess I've got a bit of a trainer brain with this rather than thinking of equipment first and foremost. In the pre-adoption stage, the biggest thing that I would say that would help new pet guardians or new pug parents is to learn dog body language.
Oh,
And not
yes.
just like loosely, like learn it deeply, learn it fluently, learn how to speak dog. We're just in the process of doing one of the rounds of community education talks with Northern Beaches Council and Ku-ring-gai Council, and we've been talking about keeping families safe around dogs. Jack Tarrant from the Dog Nose and Demi from Pillar Report have been doing deep dives into dog body language, and particularly in terms of using like a traffic light system, we say that most people who've been around dogs can tell when a dog is overtly happy or overtly angry.
Mm.
But it's the yellow or amber light, the fawn, spittle,
Subtle.
fidget, subtle signs that people often don't pick up on. A lot of pet guardians are not necessarily aware that a dog is cross until the dog growls. And really, as we know as experienced dog guardians, is that growling is like you've probably missed at
You've
least
already done it.
five different body language signals. Like
Yep.
you're already like you're in pre-bite. Like
Yep.
so I think that's really important, but then also to understand the way that stress affects behavior, the way that it can
Oh.
cause a dog to be shut down, especially if they've had a history of heavy-handed punishment or if they're just not the
Mhm.
most resilient or robust individual. Being put into a new environment can cause them to just be really inhibited, and that might make them appear very calm to the
Mm.
untrained eye. Ask me how I know. That was
Yeah.
exactly the snow. And we were 22 and we didn't know as much as we thought we did, which is just that wonderful period of time before the prefrontal cortex really fully develops and you think you know everything.
Everything.
Everything. I miss the person I was. I was so confident then, but it was dangerous confidence. But learning the subtle signs of dog body language is probably the number one most important thing. Even if you already have a dog and think you know it really well, there is the pet perspective. If you want to look them up online, they have online body language courses. I think there's one that's even free for pet guardians, and then some that are more detailed that are paid. I would highly recommend looking into that.
Ah.
Then the stuff that we talked about in episode 14, all of the like pre-adoption stuff, like your list of like your ideal traits that you were looking for in a pet dog or a pet pug, and your non-negotiable deal breakers, the things that you don't want to deal with, you don't want to live with, and that is okay. I think that especially when we work in rescue and when I was a kennel hand at Monica's, I definitely had these words come out of my mouth more often than I could tell you to be like, people just need to try harder. They're not doing enough. And it's like, no, no, people are allowed to say, "I don't want a dog that is biting people." People are allowed
Oh.
to say, "I don't want a dog with separation anxiety," or, whatever it is. Like, it's okay.
Yep.
Much like with a romantic relationship, it is okay to not want a project. That's okay, and you shouldn't feel bad for saying it.
Mm.
But ideally, say it before you sign the papers,
Yes.
before you bring the dog home. Don't fall in love with a pretty face. Again, ask me how I know. You look at a picture of Snow, God, she was pretty. Like, don't fall in love with a pretty face, take the dog home and then go, "Oh, I don't wanna do that," because the dog's already home then, and that's where it can become a bit unfair. Again,
Mm.
don't keep the dog in a bad situation just because 'cause you're like, "Oh, well, I'm dumb." But, yeah, it's really, really important to have those non-negotiables, and then once you have decided, once you've signed the papers, you know the dog is coming home on X date, have a family meeting if you have multiple people in your house, or especially if you have children in the house, and set up
Ah.
a safe space for the dog. So you might use baby gates, playpens, you might designate a room of the house that has a baby gate over it or whatever it is, and say that like we're going to set all the dog's food and bed and all of their nice things up in them, we're going to show them that this is their place.
Yeah.
And if they're in this space, you leave them. I nearly swore. Leave them alone.
It's okay. We have a beeper.
Oh, good. I'm working really hard with my toddler to replace certain words with fluffy duck.
Oh,
So leave them the fluffy duck alone.
yes.
Like,
Even humans need time out.
yes, indeed. So really, really important to create that safe space for them. Obviously, the dog doesn't know it's their safe space. So as I say, put all their nice things in there. Put lovely words are hard, lovely treats and things in there for them. And then the big thing, especially, is make sure the kids in the house know to leave the dog alone, or even adults in the house for the first like 3 days to a week. You don't need to ignore the dog entirely, but
Mm.
let them come to you or invite them into your space.
Yeah.
Have a little pat and then move away from them to see if they follow you and ask for more attention or
Yeah.
solicit that physical touch from you again. But I think the biggest thing that we often do is love them too hard because we're so excited and we want to show them how much we love them. And we've been waiting for this dog to come home and we just want to touch them. And that's where we can unintentionally overwhelm them because we've got to remind ourselves that this dog doesn't know us yet. They're
Mm.
just an alien in our house, just going, I have been stolen from everything that I know, my
Yep.
previous home, my previous life, essentially incarcerated, without being told the what or the why. What you were saying before about moving
Yeah.
around with the baby and even that being
Yeah.
disorienting.
It's
You
still
knew
yeah.
what was gonna happen and you knew where you were going. You signed up for it literally,
Yeah.
and it's still like, "Oh god." So for a dog, like, that they're just getting essentially bounced from pillar to post, and then they land in our home, it can it's hard for them, but it's also it'd be really jarring for the human who's like, "I love you so much," and then the dog
Oh, yeah.
snaps at them, and they're like, "Well, what the
What the
hell?"
hell?
If you haven't got that mindset about how, your dog relates to the world and views the world differently to humans, all of that can sort of set us up to feel upset or resentful or just go, "Oh, this wasn't what I expected." Um,
Mm.
so yeah, rambling at this stage, but I hope that sort of
No, no, it was absolutely spectacular and spot on. I was actually as you were talking, I was thinking about all my past pugs and how I've evolved over the years, especially, like, some of the things like learning, like, literally the amount of touching. And I mean, pugs are loving creatures, so the likelihood of them not accepting a pat is pretty minimal, and lots of them, if anything, they're usually clawing your legs so that they can get up onto the couch with you. But it's actually quite interesting. Like, I look at Kenji who, actually, no, I'll take one step back. There's also still a lot of I shouldn't say bad old information out there.
Mm.
Like, I still, even now, as I try to educate people when they come into contact with any of the pugs, is that they actually don't like being patted on the head.
Oh, thank
Um,
you God. It's
and
another thing we've
and
been
coming into the house and then having everyone in the family pat them on the head, it's just it's such a little thing. As you were saying before, notice all the subtleties about their body language.
Mhm.
Um, and then but you don't see them flinching when you pat them on the head. And so it's quite interesting, sort of I was actually saying to, a friend of the family, like, I've almost got the wording down right where I say, "Incidentally, have you learned that there's new research? Dogs actually don't like being patted on the head, but Buster loves a tickle under the chin." And
Yeah,
so and they will do it, but I still see people, it's the first thing they do
yeah.
whenever they come up to a dog. And then sort of like if you're doing that when they're coming into your house, it's almost like when you say the first impressions are the ones that generally tend to stay.
Yeah.
It is so hard to make sure that that first impression is a positive one. And I think that you then have to work hard after that to establish that positive environment. And to be honest, I will be the first person to put up my hand. When Winston and Charles first come to live with us, I think once I almost choked Winston. He'd done something and I look back now and I think the poor little bugger must have been so confused and I was so frustrated because he just wouldn't do whatever the stupid thing is that I was asking him to do at the time. And I really wish that I could go back and rewrite that scene.
You
Um,
only know what you know,
no,
and we're all
absolutely.
we're all emotional beings, like, everyone gets frustrated at points, and I think that's another reason to circle back to that safe
Yeah.
space. Whether it's a new puppy or a rescue dog, having what we would essentially call a safe, positive confinement space. Because, like, again, using a human parenting thing, they say a joke, if you are losing your temper and you feel like you're going to shake the baby, put them in the cot and just walk away. Take a deep breath. Come back with a settled emotion. Don't just, lose your temper. And
Yep.
it's hard. So
Oh,
having
yeah.
somewhere that that it's puppy proof or, new rescue dog proof where you can just be like, here's a fistful of kibble that I may throw maliciously into the corner with rage. Follow that, and I'm going to close this door before I absolutely lose it because we are all human. We all have a limit. And especially when you
Mm,
bring a new being into your home, like it changes your lifestyle, it changes your routine. And even though we signed up for it, it's still hard. Like when I got
God, yeah.
Odin, he's, my beautiful, perfect Rottweiler puppy that I have wanted ever since I was a little girl. Like my cousins had Rottweilers growing up, and that's, I wanted him so much. And another trainer that was a mentor for me at the time, Barbara Hodel from Good Dog, we went and met up for coffee about, I think, 2 or 3 weeks into me having Odin. And I sat down, she's like, "How's it all going?" And I just burst into tears. Like, I was like, "Really hard." It's just like and, like, having a new puppy in the house, like, he was the first baby puppy I was ever responsible for solely as an adult. Snow was 8 when we got her, and
Yeah.
she was toilet trained. She never once peed in the
Oh,
house. We were so lucky on
oh,
that.
yeah. Fat Dog was the
Behavioural
same. I was
behaviorally,
spoiled.
yes, but she was house trained.
Oh,
Like,
So
But,
smart.
like, I wanted Odin desperately. I signed up for it. I am a professional in the industry, and I was ready, and it was still really hard. Maybe I was overdoing it a little bit with, sometimes too much knowledge is a dangerous thing. Um, like, but it's really hard. So I guess I'm sharing that just in the way of, like, validating that, like, even when you wanted it and you're prepared and you've got everything right, sometimes it's still really hard, and that's just
Yeah.
part of the roller coaster of welcoming another sentient being into your home.
No, crying is normal. Being
Yes, the puppy
angry.
blues is a documented thing.
Oh,
Um,
really? Oh,
the
yeah.
puppy blues, like
And to like, as I said, I've lost my shit that day at Winston, and I regretted it every day since, and it was so important that I cannot even remember what it was that I lost my shit over. God, he probably piddled in the house for crying out loud, like, just
for the 7th time that day though,
yeah,
and
yeah, bro.
like but even with snow, like and again, I was 22 and very young and dumb, but, like, I do remember the first night when we brought her home too, I just kinda looked over at her in her bed and was like, "What have I done?" Like, "What have I done?" And
Yes,
I think that that's actually
adopter's
weirdly a
remorse.
green flag to be like, "This is a big deal."
Mm.
Like and to be, like, a bit like, "Oh, wow," and then go, "Cool, we're gonna do this." But, like, if you have a bit of a, like, "What could possibly go wrong?" attitude, that's maybe the red flag. Like
And I have to it's probably it is a good one of my regrets was that I didn't get a trainer in sooner. And I think not so much with Fat Dog, but especially with Winston and Charles, because they were 2 when I adopted them. I naively thought that I'd already had a pug for 7 years, and I grew up with hunting dogs. I know everything there is to know about caring for pugs. And then when Winston and Charles come and sort of the knee choking incident, I think was within the first month or 2, so well and truly within the honeymoon period. Probably my biggest regret was not calling someone sooner and saying, "I actually need help. This
Yeah.
is" and it didn't even and to be honest, I think calling someone else who had dogs wouldn't have helped. I think really I should have called a professional. And so the reason why I'm saying this is as a slight segue because you do provide this service to new adoptive parents because it's actually needed. Who would have thought that it's ringing someone and crying and saying, "Oh my God, I can't think I can do this," or "I nearly choked my pug because he did something that I didn't want him to do because he didn't understand my rantings."
I mean, I think, yeah, getting help from a trainer sooner rather than later is such an overlooked thing because often, especially if you had dogs in the past, as you say, you're like, "Oh, I'm sure I can sort this out. It's
Look at
just
this.
dog training." And, a lot of the time probably can, but there are always situations where you just don't know what you don't know. And
Mm.
understanding that a car is not a sentient being, but I use an analogy of, like, my mechanic with my car. I'm like, "I don't know, car just go." Car
Yes.
go when I press accelerator, and it don't go if I don't put oil or petrol in.
Mhm.
That's about my knowledge of my car. But, if I take it into my mechanic, he has the skills and the knowledge because he's qualified and experienced to look into it and go, "Oh, yeah, I actually just had it in this earlier in this week." And he's like, "Did you get the wheels aligned?" And I was like, "Yes." He's like, "Well, this bolt was loose, and so they hadn't done it properly, and if you hadn't brought it in, I mean, that could have been really dangerous." And I was like,
Mm.
"Holy crap. Here I am just driving around like,
Yep,
doop-de-doo, what could possibly go wrong?"
very happily.
So, getting a professional trainer in, obviously, if everything's going great, that's great. You
Oof,
don't need to spend your money.
oof.
But if you're not sure or you think you need a bit of help, getting some help sooner rather than later, it makes it so much easier to address or work on reducing unwanted behaviors and building new skills before they become well practiced. So, I did create a sort of different service because I see fairly, like, if you're in that kind of interim period where you're like, "I'm not sure if I need help, but I kinda think I might need help." Spending $300 on a in-person behavioral consultation, you may be like, "Ooh, maybe let's just wait and see." Fair, I
Yep.
live on a budget as well. So I have a 30-minute Zoom Q&A service for new rescue dogs or new puppies. It's $100 for half an hour. You get the recording, and it's kind of like just having a doggy helpline to just jump on Zoom like we are now and have a big old bellyache chat. Why does my dog? What could I do for? And pick my brain. And then if I feel you need a consultation after that, I will let you know. Or if I can give you some tips to go, look, just do this, 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 and this and see how you go, that should be fine enough. So it's $100 for half an hour. You really can't go wrong. It's better than asking the internet, let me tell you.
That and I also think that it's actually a huge misnomer that I seem to hear more and more. I've got a fellow that lives down the road who's got a rescue, and his perception is that everything that is wrong with his dog is because he hasn't trained him well enough. And from what I have seen, everything that is inverted commas wrong with his dog is because he's training a dog who is essentially anxious and fearful.
Mm.
And that is kind of, and so I'm not saying that obedience training is not valuable. It is absolutely valuable. There will come a time where it will probably save your dog's life because they
Mhm.
won't run across the road, which pugs are not car aware at all, which is why I always do obedience training with my pugs. There is a place for it. But when it comes to the behavioural side of the house, I think there is this misnomer that
Mhm.
behaviour will be dealt with obedience training, and they're actually two separate things that require two different approaches. And it's something that I've only learned in the last 5 or 6 years, and it's because I've had to. Because as we get more pugs who come through, like Kenji's the first pug I ever had who had anxiety. And so when he come into the house, he was on Prozac and still terrified of storms. So much so that I used to have to sleep on the couch with him whenever there was a storm. And I would wake up knackered and he would wake up wonderfully well rested and ready for the
Oh.
day. But he now only gets really scared when the thunder and lightning is right over the house. And to be honest, who doesn't? It's
Yeah.
really loud and really disconcerting. But it wasn't until Kenji come into my house and then I had to go, damn, I have a foster pug who has a real problem that I've never dealt with before. I need to educate myself because I'm really afraid that I'm going to do worse. I'm going to make it worse for him instead of better. We've tried to take him off the Prozac, like we've tried to lower his dosage, and he just can't. He can't cope without it. And so we're like, okay, he is one of those pugs that won't. But we've had other pugs where I'm not joking. I've had to get down on my hands and knees and play bow and play bow and play bow until they've trusted me enough to walk out of their crate.
Yeah.
But the great thing is like the Donna of old would have gone and grabbed them out of the crate and just thrown them onto the bed with everybody else and said, "You guys are all pugs. You love each other. You know each other's smell. Enjoy.
She'll be right.
She'll be fine." And so that's sort of that's why I really wanted to highlight the fact that there is somebody who you can ring and say, I don't think this is an obedience problem.
Mm.
I think this is a communication problem. And it might very well be that my crying to my pug, who won't do what I want him to do, is actually less about me and more about my ability to communicate with my pug. So I've learned the hard way. Don't learn the hard way. That's without. And I suppose probably my closing comment is it's a honeymoon period. It's called that for a reason. It does get better. It really, and I think one of the best parts about the honeymoon period is also learning about their personality. Like there's nothing better than figuring out what it is that they really love and they really hate, and the in-betweens. Rosie is a diva. She is a daddy's girl. She is the first pug I've ever had that has not been a mummy's pug.
Ah.
And I was really offended for about for about a week. I was so jealous. It's so terrible. Andrew's never had a pug have as his human until Rosie, and then I wanted to take her away from him.
This is
Like,
mine.
"Oh, mate." It's like, old mate from 101 Dalmatians are all mine.
Oh, like seeing their personality blossom and seeing them start to trust you and the way that they're like their facial expression, their eyes light up, like how
Yeah.
everything changes for the better most of the time.
Yes.
Like it's really lovely. It's the best part of it. That's the whole joy of getting into rescue or rescuing your dog from a shelter is that you get to be a part of that process. And you know what? It isn't always easy. Like you do have ups and downs or like sleepless nights or 7 accidents in the house over the period of a day. But you reap what you sow from taking that time to help them to heal and to trust and to get used to this new home. Like, it's such a privilege. And there's nothing really like earning the trust of a nervous or anxious rescue dog, particularly. It is often the ones with the behavioral challenges that get you to work really, really hard, but then you just end up being so just in love with them. Like, it's just I can't quite get my words right because
Right.
it's feeling that you can't really describe. It's not like anything else. It's that unconditional love that only a dog can give. Like, they can't, like, get into the terrible 2 stage and start saying no to everything. Like, living at the
Well, they
moment.
do in their own way. You just basically get tail.
Mm,
Yeah,
mm.
or the tilt of the head is the
That's
other
it, that's
thing
it.
I get.
Um, but yeah, just it is such a special thing to do and to get to experience. So I definitely would encourage people to take the time and to work with a trainer or someone at the shelter to make sure that you're making the most informed choice possible. And then when you do bring them home, being mindful of that 3-3-3 rule so that you have the best chance of settling them in, having everybody get used to each other, getting to know each other's personalities, likes and dislikes. And one thing that I can just see in my notes that I wanted to mention too is that when you do start going for your first walks together, you want to make sure that the walking equipment is really safe and secure.
Yeah.
If you want to be really, really careful, you might put a leash on their collar and a separate leash on their harness.
Mhm.
Make sure they've got their ID on them. Make sure you've updated their microchip information so it's not still the shelter's information, that it's been swapped to yours.
Mhm.
I'm trying to remember correctly, but I'm pretty sure the change of owner form doesn't do that. I think that you have to do that with your council, if I remember correctly. It's been a while since I
Oh, the
rescued
chip. I
a dog,
think the chip, it's
but
like $20 to transfer
mm,
the ownership, and
yeah,
then the council, I think, is well, for our council, the rescue does, and it doesn't cost anything.
yeah. So
Um,
always just triple check that sort of stuff. Like, even
yeah,
if the rescue say they're gonna do it, go on to in New South Wales, it's the Pet Registry, Office of Local Government. Go on there and search your pet's microchip and be like,
yeah.
"Is this registered to me?" And then, as I was saying, when you go for your first walks, you make sure the equipment is really secure and just go to really nice, quiet locations for short periods and gradually build up to busier locations. So what you were talking about with one of your
Mm.
rescue pugs, whose name I do apologize, I've
Roxy. No,
forgotten.
that's okay, Roxy.
You went early to the off-leash meetup where it was fenced, you let her rip around on her own or with known dogs, had a very, very brief interaction with the people that were coming, and then left when the party actually started. And
Mm.
then I imagine that you probably stayed for the party for incrementally longer
Yeah,
periods, seeing
5-minute
body
hits.
language, that's it,
Yeah,
that's it. And always being prepared, even if you were thinking, "Today we're gonna stay for 10 minutes," you read her body language, and if she's not having a great time, you leave.
yeah.
And that's a really great way to help to just bolster up that confidence. So taking things slow and steady, listening to your dog, reading their body language, and always being prepared to shift gears if they're not enjoying what's happening is a really nice measure and just something that I just like, "Ooh, I just wanna say that one
No,
first."
absolutely, it's perfect. Great way to end the session, but the perfect way is if people do, in the honeymoon period or they're about to commence, or they're just thinking, "Oh my god, maybe I need some advice." How do they find you?
Yeah, so we've got our website, howlingsuccessdogtraining.com. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram under Howling Success Dog Training. We've got YouTube and TikTok, but we don't really post there very frequently. That is for that Zoom 30 minutes for
Mm,
$100, the Q&A. We can do that for anyone in Australia. So if you are looking for guidance in just creating your, pros and cons list for getting your dog in the pre-adoption stage, if you're getting ready to bring them home and you want some advice setting up your home environment, or if you are in the honeymoon period and it's not going great or you're not sure, that is what that service is for. It's just $100 for 30 minutes so that you can ask questions to a professional trainer who's got rescue experience and just hit a few of the nails on the head without having to
mm,
commit to a full consultation. Yeah, that's that.
awesome. Thank you for coming back on again, Jess. We had a couple of false starts, but I'm so
Yes.
glad we managed to get it. We got it sorted in the end, and
Yeah,
all
thank
before
you.
Christmas, most importantly.
And thank you for your patience with that. It was some internet issues and toddler
It's always the
tantrums and
way.
things like that, but we got there in the end. A
Yes.
rainy Saturday helped
Oof.
us.
Yes, definitely. We'll see you soon.
Great. Thank you so much.
Bye. If you're in the middle of the honeymoon phase with your rescue pug, or you've just realised that you are, remember patience, consistency, and love go a long way. And if you're still having trouble coping, then at least you know you're not the only one and you have Jess to call on for help as well. I promise As a pug mum of 20 years to rescues and foster pugs, their true personality will shine through soon enough. And that's when the real pug love begins. Keep showing up for your pug. I guarantee they're showing up for you in ways you might not even realise yet. Now, do you have a funny story about your Rescue Pug Honeymoon period, or is it more of a horror story? Regardless of the story, please share it over in our Facebook group, the Pug Life Show Podcast. Plus, if you haven't already, please follow the podcast so you don't miss out on the next episode. And while you're at it, leave us a review. It only takes a couple of seconds to give us a 5-star review, and it goes a long way to helping other pug parents find us. Rosie, Kenji, Buster, and I hope that you will join us again soon. But until then, have a pawsome week, and humans, be generous with the snackies.